yesterday. Yeah, I did my own for this, you know, I was out for a couple of weeks, like, you know, and I would go. I was down with but all of a sudden, it's like, okay. I lived in a pretty state. First townhouse I ever lived in. Like, oh, yeah. Well, look, I mean, I have two best friends, but, you know, so, we, Bernie, who also is into a test now, and we, were to Fun Fest. And so. Yeah. And so, I'm good to eat. I know, I was really nervous, but, he's got it all put together. And last night, his twin was old,
Young Brad up there. Your grabs is going to get started because we get the class starting at 10. So we need to get food and get Mary Ann, give her an opportunity to talk to everybody. Morning, Miss Kaya.
Where is everyone, Brian?
I told everybody.
You did, I saw.
Over and over and over. We had to start every day because it's in class and starts on time.
She is like, she's acting smart by. She got a puppy.
oh, my.
I said, you should have got a puppy this morning. She's like, oh my God, I slept 8, 9, 10 times this morning.
Had to do what?
She had to stop like getting ready.
So I already started on that. Starting early is part of the day. I got a technical class. I got to start on early.
But we don't have a.
1 to 4 contracts.
Yeah, that's right. There's not like.
Golden.
But she won't breakfast. I let them come. But
Yeah, I know. I know. I'm telling you, I think that's important. It's important.
I figured it might be light today.
I was figuring it would be cramp packed. For 1 4.
What's up? What's up?
What I do?
No, his arm, and then you were walking right.
Let's go ahead and get started and give Mary Ann a little time with us this morning. And as people come in, we'll have Mary Ann, people are going to be walking in while we're talking. It's just starting this time, this is the way it goes. Well, thanks everybody for coming, and Nicole for joining us online. I'm sure more people will be jumping on as we go through this. This is Mary Ann King. She is with Achosa Home Warranty, and she's left you a pamphlet there, and I'll put some stuff in Slack for everybody online later this afternoon with Mary Ann's contact information. And if I trip on this chair again, I'm going to scream. That's the way it goes. So go ahead. That was perfect. I loved it. Sure, no problem.
So it's so good to see you guys, and Clarissa, I've known for a long time. You guys, yay, Rachel. I just want to see that baby. So, November 4th was my 4-year anniversary with Achosa, and I have not. I've been so busy. I didn't even post anything about it. I have something drafted, you know, how that goes. But it's been amazing. So our concept, when we let the homeowner use a local contractor, it's just so simple. It's very simple. So when it's 110 degrees outside, you call a home warranty company and the contractor says it's going to be a week before you get there. That's not going to work. So I get those calls during the summer months too, where an agent will call me and say, "What's your turnaround time?" Like, what do you mean? I know what they mean. You know, we don't have a turnaround time. It's all in your control when you're using your own local contractor. So our company is founded by home warranty veterans. They just said there's got to be a better way, because it didn't matter what the situation was. It didn't even have to do with the contractor, but just something in the whole process. They would always come back to just let the homeowner use their own contractor. I'm always asking, can I just use my own people? And they would, but then they would only pay wholesale. Homeowners still start paying retail. So our concept is we will pay retail, up to specific amounts. We're very transparent about that, and we pay the contractor directly over the phone with a credit card.
Paula, can you mute your mic, please?
Yes.
We got people on. Yay!
Thank you.
So when something fails, a homeowner calls us, places a claim. give them authorization to call their own contractor. If they move here from California, we say, welcome to Texas. They don't know who to call. We'll send them 3 retail contractors, so it's still in their control who they want to, have come into their home. And then when the contractor's at the home, call us back with the diagnosis. We approve it over the phone. So it's $100 service fee. I had a buyer yesterday. I sent him the brochure and then I followed up. But I haven't emailed today because your service fee's too high. Oh my God, are you kidding me? You're gonna make a decision based on the service fee. Most of them are between $75 and $100 now. We're $100, but the difference with us is that we do not collect it up front. A lot of companies, they'll place a claim online. They collect the credit card up front, send out a contractor to say it's not covered. They've already paid the service fee. So we don't think that's very positive. So when the claim is approved, that's when they pay the service fee directly to the contractor. If for some reason it's not covered, they don't owe us anything. And they have the contractor there to go ahead and move forward with the claim. Do y'all have any questions on that? No? Let me ask you this. What are you guys seeing in the market? I was talking to Brian earlier about getting home warranties written into the contract. Are we seeing it come back? Hi. Heard about a new puppy. I guess I need to go on Facebook and look at the pictures.
Oh my gosh, yeah. It's like having a baby.
That's what we said.
Yes.
Yeah. So, I'm just curious, what y'all seeing in the market? Are you able to get home warranties negotiated back in? I think
I am.
I mean,
I've
we-
not had any problems.
good.
I feel like any offer that we've gotten, we've got.
Yeah, I mean, in the last couple months, I do feel like the buyer leads are pretty healthy for spring.
Okay, good.
Good.
Hopefully we'll keep it steady so that we can put some things in there for them.
Brian.
I'm Brian.
Liz wanted me to do this.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Thank you for George. Okay.
Okay, thank you. I just sent him a message online. Thank you.
Thank you.
A lot of them listed that I've shown are like they're pretty quality. So a lot of like the HVAC and plumbing systems have been updated. So what's a, I guess, way to still say, hey, I still want home warranty, this is a quality listing that you're probably.
Yeah.
We're finishing the first part of our meeting. We'll be back in just a
Oh, yeah,
second.
Yeah, because they feel like they don't need a home warranty.
Yeah.
Everything is updated.
We see an average of 2.7 claims on first year contracts. I am testament to that. My boyfriend and I bought a home in January, moved in February. I had 3 claims in the first 90 days. So, yeah, and it's called welcome to home ownership, yeah, right? Thank God I had the home warranty. So, if that helps you, just have that cover to know that, when you get a new homeowner using the system differently than the previous homeowner, things are gonna happen. Yeah, so good question. Good question. The value of it, it's just, yeah. Well, liability protection for you guys, liability protection for the seller, and then peace of mind for the buyer.
I even offered to buy it as a gift.
No, I've done that.
And,
Definitely done that.
Awesome.
just
And I
if they
did work.
And well,
Yeah.
yeah, but also just on the liability side of things, for them to be like, well, no, it's okay. Yeah, I offered. Like I went out of my way. I tried to get it from the seller. They didn't
Right.
agree. I tried to do it. You didn't agree.
Do you have anything in writing that they disclosure? So, I'll email you guys a PDF. Our application page is fillable PDF, and it's got accept or decline box on it,
Oh,
just for your protection.
Interesting. Yeah, that'd be cool.
And a lot of times when you put that in front of them, when they're looking at it going, oh, yeah, well, that AC is a little older. I might need to do that. That helps. Yeah. So I'll send that to you guys.
That'd be awesome.
So what is your process? Are you guys offering options for different home warranty companies? 3 choices?
usually 3.
Okay, good.
Just for liability reasons, just in case
Okay.
crazy happens.
You can grab a contract right there if you want, Jana. There's a thing right there and there's Chick-fil-A out there.
Well, hopefully you'll include Achosa as part of your choices. The company we did name it with an A for a reason, so hopefully it's alphabetical. It's kind of a funny story. It's a made up name. But we've been in business for 6 years, and once it's been used for a year, it's an official word. That's just dictionary now.
Wow, that's awesome. What is it mean?
Power to choose. Yeah, and it's the first 2 letters of the first name of 3 of our co-founders. They just don't know. A lot of people, when they first started the company, like, that's a stupid name. We're like, it is what it is. And then we keep the plan, it's very simple, where we cover the exact same items on every plan. The only difference is the amount of coverage increases for the heating, the AC, and the water heater and the appliances for each plant. So if those systems are older, I recommend Prime Plus to get higher coverage amounts. And then what you said about if you're purchasing it for the buyer, either if you were the buyer or purchasing it, I have a $50 discount.
Okay, great.
I automatically offer that.
Cool.
Yeah, hopefully we can get it negotiated paper by the seller, but I know how that goes sometimes. He said he had some multiple offers here recently. Yeah. So let's
Yeah.
go for that.
On a buyer.
Are we seeing that again?
Just certain pockets. It's so micro neighborhood right now.
Where was it?
Keller, 76244.
Yeah.
Yeah, in Villages, Woodland Springs.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just certain pockets at certain price points.
Yeah.
What
You're
price
seeing,
point was that?
it was listed at 400. We bought it for 395
Yeah.
with a multiple offer, and we won 5,000 below list price.
Wow.
Wow.
And then it appraised for 412. So they walked into $17,000 of equity off the bat. So it was an unusual situation. I haven't seen it anyplace else. I don't know what you guys are seeing, but
So, I think of this, so, you know, as the market is changing and seller concessions, I get those calls every so often. Just something to keep in mind. If you have seller concessions, I get more people to call me and we got a couple $1,000s left over. Can we use it on the home warranty? I'm like, yes, I can help you with that. So that's just one of the things I wanted to remind you guys about there. Get seller concessions.
and I'll put Mary Ann's stuff into Slack this afternoon in the broker channel. Where you'll have her contact information and, add her to your list, please, of options for your clients to select from. Mary Ann's a good sponsor and a friend of ours. So let's support her like she supports us.
So I appreciate that. Yeah, our goal is to help you guys get more client referrals. That's how when we founded the company, saying there's got to be a better way. So because as many years as I've been in it, and realtors that have long-term relationships with, it doesn't matter how many claims went well. You got one bad one, you lose a client, never gonna refer anything to you. Not a good thing. So keep it very positive. And real quickly, our NPS Net Promoter Score, we're right up there with Starbucks, Costco, Sam's, Apple. That's where we send out a survey on every claim. And I am just flabbergasted that people actually take the time to complete a survey, not even just go 4 or 5 star or whatever, but they actually put very positive feedback. So if you see my stuff on social media, I do a customer note Tuesday or Feedback Friday. That's taken directly from those surveys. So very good.
Thank you, Mary Ann. Appreciate you very much.
And then, yeah, but we're not connected. Mary Ann King, home warranty queen, providing all the service everybody here. Okay.
Thank you, Mary Ann. Appreciate it so much. Okay, very good. Let me go ahead and hit our next couple things. So we're going to do a core value and get this done before we hit the contract class. And I don't know all the ins and outs of what that's going to look like for CE yet. So I'm told that this counts as an hour of CE, but I don't know if they're making us sign up. I don't know if they're making us pay. I don't have any idea what that looks like. Okay. So our core value this week is we never bring a problem without bringing and trying at least one possible solution. We are problem solvers, not problem identifiers. We encourage critical thinking and a proactive approach to handling issues. Asking for help is encouraged. It must be done in the context of also thinking of solutions on your own. Before we bring an issue or problem to a team member, we first think of ways to solve it. One thing I want that you guys to, the reason I'm spinning this a little bit is because I don't know if you saw the red line contract that was approved. Came out yesterday. I'll be sharing it in Slack as a link today, but there's some changes there. Nothing big, nothing we weren't expecting. It's just the changes that were coming. Also saw that the T47.1, the survey declaration got approved, but it's still got to be voted on by the committee, I guess, in 2 weeks. So eventually we'll have that ability to do a declaration instead of an affidavit. Declaration is just the seller signing, an affidavit has to be notarized. So that's where we're going to go.
By the way, I just want to throw in there that it was a great thing that my ethics course didn't count. And I had to do through NAR because they had incorrect slides on there that were talking about MLS compensation.
Oh, really?
So
Wow.
I sent it to them.
Okay, so real quickly on announcements.
Code of ethics through NAR.com. I was going through the code of ethics and they had like 3 or 4 slides that were referencing compensation on MLS and scenarios. And I was like, screenshot, email it.
Okay, so next week,
Yeah.
Next week, 9:45 with Jason Suber of Prosperity Mortgage. And then we're having a presentation from a company called True Footage, which is an appraisal software company that Brian Wright and I looked at, and he thought it was worthy to bring to you guys. It's a per use thing to use their services, but I'll let them go through True Footage next week. It's about a 15-minute presentation during the meeting. Please fill out the form. Even if you're not coming to the Christmas extravaganza, we need to know who's coming, who's not coming, who's bringing clients, and who's not. So please fill out that form. It'll be in Slack. Code of Ethics, there was, after I preached on it for 6 months, there were still almost 15 people that didn't take it. So everybody's taking it now. We're all talking about it, but we need to make sure that everybody gets that done.
Well, I think it's important to point out, because even like me, when I did my CE package, it had an ethics course in there, and they don't translate.
Yeah, they don't translate. It has to be done through the Code of Ethics. Okay, we're going to hit one more thing here. Remember the 6F swag. If you want to get that, pick it up here, and then you pay for it here. That's the only way that we do it is pay for it here, and then you can pick it up here in the office. We'll go through this stuff in just a few minutes. Actually, we're going to actually get with Jacob. George, is it Jacob or George? What do you prefer?
Hold on, it's George. Jacob is my 20-year-old son who decided to use my Zoom for fantasy football, and I didn't get it back to my name.
I got it. Give me just a second. I need to stop sharing this screen and share a different screen. So bear with me while I get you up and running here in the office. This one, share. Okay. Can you hear me now, George?
I can, yes, sir.
Okay. And for some reason, I'm not getting you through my speakers here, and that would be very, very important. So give me just a second.
Okay.
Why is it not translating?
No, we were in New Orleans this weekend, and we're just doing them on Monday, and American canceled here in the airport of Remington for 12 hours.
Okay, George, let's try that.
Yes, sir.
Oh,
I hear you fine. All right.
I think we are good. We can hear you on our TV, which is where we needed to have you. So that is fantastic. And
That works. Is Liz there by any chance from McKnight or?
Hi, I'm here on the, and we got new computers, and I realized we don't have, camera. So I'm on my phone and my computer, so that's why you're gonna see the side of my face.
no problem. Thank you, Liz, for setting this up. So appreciative of you doing that. And George, thank you for being here with us. We appreciate you guys.
Oh, my pleasure. Well, that's, again, the Jacob, just like I said, just realized my Zoom wasn't just for work. It became a conduit to 20-year-old fantasy football. And I just realized it. So I apologize for that. But my name is George Stabline, and I am with Worth National Title, and we are an underwriter in the state of Texas. We're closely affiliated, well, really affiliated with our sister company, McKnight Title, which is Liz is a part of. I am CEO and president, but not in charge of IT. So if there's anything we need to get to you after the class to get you credit or whatever it is you need, Liz will take care of that, I assume. But one of the things I'm an attorney by trade, been doing this 30 years. Like most people, nobody got into title insurance right when they got out of law school because of the love of title. It just happened to fall into it, and we're very glad to be part of your class. And today we're talking about contracts, and we do have a PowerPoint to show you later, but candidly, that was done by somebody who's not with us anymore, and I looked it over, and having done this as long as I've had, I thought, does everybody do Liz, do they have a copy of a contract?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
So one of the things I've learned in my long way too many years is that sometimes it's good to go over the basics, but not, and then kind of expand to what the real world is. I know there's a lot of contract classes, and you'll be done right at 11, just so you know, a few minutes before. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. And we'll be glad. But what I have found is, from my end as the underwriter, we're the one that Liz blames when we have to ask for an additional spouse or we have to do an affidavit of heirship or things of that nature. We're the ultimate insurer of the product that you guys, that you get from McKnight Title. So anytime there's an underwriting issue, and after this, you'll have my number, because I bet you Liz will give it to you. So if you ever have any questions or any needs, one of the things we do offer, even on the underwriter side, is the ability to talk to one of our attorneys. We are in the middle of hiring at least one other attorney to help with this, so we'll let you know what that is. But first thing I always wanted to just tell people when they do a contract is to not be afraid of doing a contract. What I have noticed in my time is some people get nervous filling it out. Some people listen to people's advice that may not be the best advice. And so the first thing I always tell people is have that great relationship with somebody, preferably your broker, well, always your broker, but have somebody that you can always go to ask questions. And I would say that's true if you've been in the business a short period of time or a long period of time. That it's always good to have that support system. And we can be that support system as well, as to ask the questions. And you will have them. I have yet to meet anybody. That's why I was sort of joking. I saw some of our competitors claim themselves to be gurus or I'm not sure what a guru is. I don't think I want to be one, but I can tell you to have that support system when you do these contracts, because at the end of the day, if there is a contract issue, and there are contract issues that come up, if you have questions about one, if it's for a friend, just say it's you, so I know it's about you and not a friend. If it's about somebody else in the room, don't point at them and start fighting. I've had that happen before. So, but if you have any questions, feel free to do so. But one of the first things I noticed with contracts is have that comfort level to ask questions. You know, every transaction is different. We do have a TREC form that we find that answers most of your questions. But if you don't have that support system, that's the first thing I see when people run afoul or have issues with contracts. The second thing I would tell you is, remember, in all states, you really need that contract to have a real estate transaction. And so at the end of the day, look at the contract as part of a story where you don't have the ability to talk. How many of you started a transaction and it was the exact same way all the way through? The answer is not very, very often, if at all. And so what I always tell people is you have to be able to, if there are contract issues. I mean, even in the short time North has been around for about 9 months, we've had a few from our agents come through where we're asked to do more than we should, but so what I'm getting at is if you can't point to what you're trying to say, you don't have the best evidence. So anytime you have to document, and that's not just the contract. And I see you, but you don't have to raise your hands. But I'm guessing a lot of your business is not done. It's very done verbally, right? You get a call. You're at a happy hour. You're at a happy hour, end the call, or you do things. And just keep in mind all of those conversations. And how many of you have had a situation where you knew you meant to say one thing, but the other side now says that's not what we talked about, or I thought this was the case, and that happens all the time. So one of the things I would tell you outside of the four corners of the contract is look at all the transaction as a contract that you want to document. So if you're at a place or you're driving and somebody calls you and there's a change of terms or a question or anything like that, don't do it while you're driving. That's not such a good thing. But when you stop, send a confirming email or text. Texts are admissible, so save your. I mean, I know sometimes you don't want to save your text messages, but when it has to deal with real estate transactions, there's nothing wrong with making a tape or copy of that or printing the text transactions and save that for your file, because you can use those to prove your point. And believe it or not, we've reached that point in society. Emojis and things like that. Be careful using those when communicating about a real estate transaction, because we've actually had situations where one person's frowning face meant something to somebody else, or a green face, which means sick, to one person actually meant sick to a younger person, because to a younger person, sick means good. I kid you not. There's sick in one thing and apparently not. So I keep your emojis to a minimum. and save your text messages. But also, if you've had a conversation with somebody, I think, and I do think this is part and parcel of the contract class, because these are the real things that come up. If you know what I mean, a lot of the classes, but this is the real world. What I'm going to tell you is, when you stop driving, while it's still fresh in your mind, because I'm a 57-year-old grandfather, I start forgetting things quickly, is I'll follow up with an email saying, to confirm our conversation of, and it doesn't have to be perfect dates. And let me tell you something, saying on or about is legal, and it gets you out of having to be too specific. So one of the things I tell people is use phrases that could be interpreted or expanded or contracted. So say on or about, what's today? I should know what today is. November 6th, we spoke about so-and-so. And then what you would say is not just say, because this is where people, have you ever, don't email mean or text mean. I can tell you, like if you said, as I've already told you 5 times, these are things I've actually seen. Rarely does it get productive after that. Or had you listened to me the first time, I guess I'll repeat it again. Doesn't, I can tell you, and why I tell you that is rarely do those things end well in court. And when you start texting or typing mean or and we all do it. I did it yesterday. So I know what I speak of. It rarely ends well, just so you know. So, but what you can do is say, this is my understanding of the conversation. Can anybody get mad at you if that's your understanding? No. It is my understanding of the following things. Spell it out. And then you say, if that is not your understanding, please let me know. Otherwise, I will assume, and it's okay to assume in this case, and move forward as if the facts are correct. Why you do that is you want to clarify before, never assume, and never feel like you have to feel, and one of the times I'll talk to people, and there's people that they'll start their sentence, why are they in the business? Okay, which is awesome. You want experience, but you have to, it doesn't mean before you get there, you're not talented. And sometimes I've seen with different areas, people will question, and I'm not saying question as far as being combative, but question. And so what I just said is this takes an oral conversation and turns it into a written statement, which you would say for your file. Because this, keep in mind, while we have the 4 corners of the contract, we also have these other things. Because rarely, in title, Liz will tell you, is that rarely does an order come in that's the exact same at closing. Ever. I mean, we had one today where it started out one way, but then there was a divorce, and it became a receiver. And now instead of dealing with a mean divorce couple, we had to deal with a receiver who, what actually was helpful, because he really didn't care about the divorce. He was there to do a job. But it changed the whole concept of the closing, that had you not documented that, when it came to me, I would have no idea how we got to from there to there. So document. The other thing I would tell you is, if you're not sure, ask. There's nothing wrong. How many of you have had a situation where somebody says, well, Trek forbids this, or the law says this? You've never heard of it. Yeah, right. And you go, oh, okay. Use this. Email them, say, hey, you've mentioned, I had one yesterday where somebody told me that an affidavit of heirship had to be given by an interested party, which doesn't make sense. That you give an affidavit of heirship and it's given by somebody who stands to benefit from the closing. And then this one, she forgot to mention she had stepchildren. I'm sure she forgot. And needless to say, the stepchildren were very interested that she was selling daddy's house.
Yeah.
Right? But I had somebody say, well, that's what you want. You don't want this. And I said, I got to tell you, I've been doing it a long time, but I've never, can you show me where? And when they do that in a contract situation, you have 2 things. Usually you're right, and there isn't such a thing. But what if you learn something new? That's pretty awesome too. So, and you're right, what does that do with contracts? Everything I just said will end up in the body of the contract, or be an amendment to the contract, or be to a closing. And the more because when you go to the title company, we're not judges, believe it or not. So you might plead the greatest case in the world, but if we look at the documents, I'm going to get to that in a second, and when we start with the contract, That's all we can go by. So remember, the title company is a disinterested party, right? We're there to close the transaction, issue title policy. So whatever it is you need to show, make sure you have it in writing. Are there any questions so far? I'll look at, I think the leader is the guy with the right cool cowboy hat.
Yeah, I'm Brian.
He gives me a thumbs up, then we can.
Yeah, anybody got any questions? Does anybody have any questions so far? I think we're good, George.
Okay, cool. So if you look at your contract, the first thing, believe it or not, is one of the most common things that we have questions about, and that's who the parties are in the contract. Okay? Usually you have a buyer and seller. Those are the parties. Okay? However, when you're talking about who the seller is, keep in mind that's going to be conditioned to what we find in a title search. And I can tell you one of the most common questions is you'll have somebody come in, they're selling the house, but we run title and it's a husband and wife, right? That's just the wife selling. So audience participation, what would be a reason that you would have a wife selling, but we run a title and there's a husband in title too?
That they're divorced.
Divorced or dead?
Divorce or death. Those are the two biggies. The third one is, there's three of them, but let's talk about that. So if there's a death, we need proof that somebody actually died. Just so you know, it is ghoulish, but we have to have some sort of proof of that. And then in that case, we have to see if they've probated the will or not. Right? So one of the things I tell you as a service with McKnight is if you get a contract, it doesn't take us very long to run a quick search and see who we have in title. So I would say anytime you have something that a single person selling, saying, I got the property in divorce, my husband died, we're the heirs, let us take a look, let us run title. It doesn't take very long and we can tell you exactly who we have, because what we're going to go by is that situation, because we've had that situation. Well, the contract says this, just as far as the title insurance goes and the lender, it's going to be what we find is going to be what we need. If you have that situation, so a divorce, we need to see the divorce decree. We got, and just so I tell you, it's amazing. Maybe I'm being prophetic here, but how many people look at a divorce and have the wrong interpretation? I mean, even if you have an ex-husband and spouse and they think it says two different things. So that's one of the reasons why we want to see the divorce decree. And that's the sooner we know that there's a divorce, the sooner we can get this is all part of the contract, because you can't move forward with this until you have the proper parties. Now, the most common question I'll get from that is, well, can we still list it? The answer is yes. Listing doesn't make a commitment part of the sign or what's going to be in our title commitment. It just allows you to move forward, because in any transaction, you have that sort of opportunity to make requirements. It's in the title, it's in the contract about title insurance. Okay, so another one you mentioned, death. We talked about divorce, we talked about death. If it's death, is there a will? If there is a will, has it been 4 years? So you see where that number one in the parties is something you want to know as soon as possible to determine if there's going to be, because you are going to want to know how long your contract or how long the closing could be, right?
Mm-hmm.
And these are things that we could tell you there may be a delay or not. And that's the thing you want to know as soon as possible. And the last one is, which does come up quite a bit, is, well, it's my property, it's my separate property. My husband doesn't need to be involved. Okay. So what I would say to that is that in Texas, we're a homestead state, but we're also a community property state. So, I would just say, be very careful when somebody says my spouse doesn't have to sign anything, and be more careful if they say my spouse doesn't have to know anything. We can, at minimum on this contract, we talk about the contract, we're going to want something eventually that shows that the spouse, at minimum, the spouse needs to know about the sale, and for obvious reasons.
Yep.
Yes.
Patty?
So I had a listing appointment last week that when I pulled the tax records, another person was on the property tax records. And when I asked the sellers, the husband and wife, they said that they were helping a friend establish credit and let them get on their deed. And I didn't know, I don't know how to, they said they were in the process.
Did I
of-
frown on TV? Hold on.
Yeah,
Sorry about that.
yeah, so I didn't know, they said that they were
Okay,
working
well,
with
let's swap.
working with an attorney to
Okay,
get it
well, we
off.
can work. Yeah, no, there's a few things we can do. First, the second thing, once you do that as, as a plug for McKnight Title, is you get a hold of your McKnight person and let's run the title and see what we find in the title exam search, okay? We can do that right after the class. Then, at that point, if we were to run title and you have active knowledge of this, we're probably, which is an interesting way to help somebody, that's really nice of them, but it may just cause a problem where what we would probably want is, well, we're gonna probably need a deed out from that person to the actual sellers. Okay,
Okay,
or they're not gonna like this, or that person can join in the transaction and sell whatever interest they may have in the deed. Does that make sense? So either at the end of the day, when the buyer gets the house, all three of them are gonna have to deed their interest in one way or another. And that's the beauty of title insurance. It doesn't have to be one way. It could be, I worked full, much my kids came when I said, I went to school full time, went to law school at night. So I kind of went to the more realistic world of law. So at the end of the day, I just want, at the end of the day, when we have that closing, that all three of their interests, whatever it may be, leaves them. At the end of the day, our insured, who's your buyer, has all the property, right, title and interest. Does that make sense?
yes, it does.
So I just take a breath, because when I heard, I frowned when I heard about it, they put them on the deed because that's where bad things happen, when people try to be too nice.
Yeah.
Right? So we would not take either of their words. So what I would say to you is, let's see what else we can find out. Because not that is all it is, but I'd be curious what else is on the tax cert. For instance, we have a tax cert company, again, plug. And we could probably run that, and we could have our plant run title just really quick and tell you, hey, this is who we have in title. But the fact that you have found that means that we're probably going to we don't want to ignore that. And that's one of the things I would tell you as a real estate agent. We have a claim now where the realtor knew that there was some stepkids out there. And then they left one title company, went to one of our agents and forgot to mention that, because candidly, that agent didn't find it. So one of the things I tell people, so did I answer your question?
Yes, yes, thank you.
Oh, no problem. Any other questions on this before I get to?
Jana, come this way so he can hear you.
Okay. I have a client
Yeah.
who went through, is in the process of going through a divorce that has a prenup. And she's the only one listed on the warranty deed. And she bought it while she was married, but the agreement was set in place, and they went to a judge down in Austin because it's a bitter divorce, and the judge threw her hands up and said, community property, and she wouldn't even look at the documentation.
So a couple things. Prenups are legal in Texas, but judges hate them and title companies really hate them. Does that mean, just remember, just because they did that doesn't mean we have to. They change. That's what I love about contract. Words are so powerful. We don't have to insure based on a prenuptial agreement. In fact, I prefer to, that's why I always ask people, but you said bitter divorce. It's not those cool divorces where they were best friends and drink coffee at Starbucks still and go on double dates with their new spouses. It does happen. I have a friend who is the best man at his ex-wife's wedding, so I've seen it. But what I've also seen is most times than not, they have a problem. So the prenuptial agreement in by itself, and when she said the community property, there are certain things that overtake, particularly like homestead. Homestead's a constitutional construct, right? And you can't deed your way out of a constitutional construct such as the homestead. So you can't prenup your way out of losing your rights to the homestead. Also, you have community property interests. So from a title company standpoint, my question is going to be, do they have attorneys? And the reason I would do that is that they're not getting along. There'll probably be a call from the title company, one of our other attorneys at first, to those attorneys saying, hey, do you know about this sale? What do you guys who's gonna sign what and how. The reason being is that we're not going to sell, we're not gonna close without including that person in one shape or another. And I use that include, not saying they have to, because we're not tax, we don't deal with tax implications, right? So we may say something. And their attorney's like, well, that's gonna ruin their tax, whatever. That's not our, so what I would say to that is if I understand they had a prenup, the judge really didn't care about the prenup. And now we're at a point now where they're both gonna have to be involved in the transaction one way or another. Unless they do under the divorce decree and it's final. See, in Texas, you're married or not. There is no separated spouse. There's no in between. You're married or not. So until the day that divorce is signed off on, you're still married to that person.
Okay, so if
Okay?
they,
And other states have different, they have a buffer. Let's just use that term.
if the judge.
So here, you're married or not, so we would have to wait till that divorce was final unless they were willing to join in the transaction together.
Hang on, George. Jamie?
Okay,
Yeah.
so if the judge determined, but the parties haven't signed, it's not final then, right?
Correct. The final judgment, what I always do is I look at the first page to see if there's a stamp on the right corner. Yeah, this is what you learn in law school when you have to work during time. You make sure it's filed. Then I go to the last page and what do you think I'm looking for on the last page? A judge's signature. So, so whenever you have a contract, so I see it's all back to contract, and believe it or not, I hope this is helpful. I mean, I could read the contract to you, but I think this might be more helpful, I hope. Okay, good. We would have to see that, because until the divorce is final, but that's one of the reasons, and now if you have this situation where you have parties and a divorce, I might ask how well they get along. My next question is going to be, do they have attorneys? Because sometimes, and it's not because I'm an attorney, I think this, is it may be helpful for us to get them involved too. And I know they don't want to pay them, that's why I understand if they have there. I always say, well, how much do you have left on your retainer? That's real world type questions that a lot of title companies won't do. And I would say, because at the end of the day, we're going to want both of their interests conveyed to the buyer, one way or another.
Okay, another quick question. If
Please.
if both parties haven't signed off on the judge's decree, can it be presented again? Okay, it can.
I
Okay.
just took a variable class last week. I'm like all fresh in my head.
Okay, so
Not
that's my
attorney,
question,
but-
because that's what she's asking me, and I'm like, I'm not an attorney, I don't know. And they're both like pseudo narcissistic egomaniacs that won't hire an attorney, and I'm like, until you guys do this the way you're supposed to do it, I'm out, because it's just a waste of my time. You're just gonna go back and forth and back and forth. So anyway, but I have told her, you need to hire an attorney. She says, I don't want to. I'm like, "Oh, after you do that, call me."
There you go.
Because you don't want to get in the mix of that when it's a mess. Yeah.
Yeah, you don't want to do that. Anytime you have a divorce, if you go to 50 marital classes, you're going to get 50 different answers. But I can tell you, mine is this. At the end of the day, you can draw it up. I want husband and wife or ex-husband and ex-wife to have their interests divested in any way that it has to be to the ultimate buyer. And until, so if the judge has signed the decree, you might want us to look at that because maybe it is a final decree.
Well,
So that's a different scenario. So what I would suggest is whatever document that you have, I don't know what title company you're using, but make sure they look at it.
yeah. And the other question is, just because you have a final decree doesn't mean that both parties are going to comply. I mean, you
Well,
can
that's
get to the
true.
closing
So
table
you get a
and
final
that
decree.
could be-
So sometimes
Well, I'm not doing it.
that's why we want to look at so a couple of things about a decree. More divorces than not settle. It's not as often as you think they go to court and fight it out, right? My 20 blah years, I've seen more of them settle than not, in one way or another. So we want to see what that settlement looks like. It's called a Rule 11 agreement. And that will tell us and in that agreement, if it mentions the property, that may work as a deed by itself. If it says George is divested of all right, title, and interest, and so is divested in all right, title, and interest, and you file that record, that could work as a deed at times. But that's why reading is so important. We'd have to look at the deed or the decree, and we can do that fairly quick and tell you exactly what our requirements are.
Okay.
And ours may be different, so just you mentioned, or I've heard it today, I had it yesterday. Just because I have a comfort level, maybe not mean that somebody else has the same comfort level. And that's in Texas, since we don't compete really on premium. Well, in fact, we don't. We're regulated on our costs. We compete on customer service and underwriting decisions. So whoever you're using as a file company, I need the one that you're talking about, have them read the documents and ask them what is it that they really need before moving forward. Because they may give you, and the other thing is, like McKnight has 5 different underwriters. I mean, we're their main one because they own us. But if they have other underwriters, somebody may have a comfort level that I don't. Because I've had some bad claims history. Like everybody has life, right? Everybody has bad histories, and some people have triggers. In my world, I've had some bad divorce experiences from a closing standpoint.
Thank you, George.
Did I answer your question? I hope.
Yes, it did. Thank you.
I have a question.
The nice thing about parties is, remember, in Texas, there's different types of spouses. I mean, there's your ceremonial spouse, the one that, you go to the altar, you get the pictures. In my son's case, the cops get called and tased one of the wedding parties. That was kind of cool. In Texas, we have common law spouses. And so and if we treat them as married, and we have all classes on all these, it doesn't mean we're saying they're married. It's just saying that from an insurance standpoint, we might treat them as married. So if one signs and says, well, it's my common law wife, she doesn't have to be involved, the answer is probably going to be yes, she does. Does that make sense?
We had another question here, Angela.
Yeah, please.
How does that apply to income producing properties? Are those considered businesses once you acquire them within a marriage? Are they still the same rules?
Well, you don't have, unless they live on, and I only say this because I live in an area now that people are having businesses, and above them are their condominiums. So we are now having what we would call business homesteads, which we hadn't had for a long time. So just remember, there's 2 ways that it has special interest. Well, it's contractually, but there's homestead. But even if it's not their homestead, so if you, like in your case, it's income producing, they still may have a community property interest. But once you're married, it's presumed, and I say presumed, you would have to overcome the presumption that there's a community interest because of a joint checking account or things. So the presumption is this, that they would both have an interest. If they don't want to have that disposed of in the sale, then they would have to overcome that interest with documentation, right? And it could be just, but at the end of the day, in the file, we would want some signature from both spouses, and what that signature is, or what it relates to, is different. It may be as a non-joining spouse, okay, or a non-participating spouse. But what we wouldn't do, or I would prefer we not do, is have a file where there's a closing and both signatures are not somewhere in the file. Because we'll look at this. Does that make sense? Because
it does.
Here's the thing: I can tell people it costs money to be right, and we are an insurance company. So if I could get that signature from the like in that case, the spouse who didn't sign the documents on an income-producing business property, if I can get something from that person acknowledging that they agree with us, that helps us a lot. Because what we don't want to do is buy a lawsuit.
Yep.
Does that make sense?
It does. Thank you very much, George. That was a great answer.
Oh, thank you. Any other questions? We're only on party, but I hope these are things that come in the contract that why it's important is if you don't have this filled out right, or you don't have the other things, then you do have issues. As far as like the second property, just, we're going to make sure that we run title. So just, if you fill that out, we're going to assume that then you knew what property you're selling or buying, and when we run title and the whole different name comes up, then we might want to relook at it. Happens more than you think. Under there, just remember the exclusions under D is, what if the seller's keeping? And this is just old school. The buyer thinks that they're going to keep what is staying at the property. And I just put a highlight by the exclusion saying, the seller's taking with them the following things. And that's all negotiable, but just make sure it's on there. Then reservations, That's gonna be an attached addendum that we don't really have to worry about because it's part and parcel to the closing, but it's just, it's an acknowledgement of what minerals are going to. Okay, and in Texas, it's presumed the minerals go to the buyer. But also, know that in the history of ever, I've never seen 100% of the minerals owned by one person. If you run back in time, somebody's gonna know something about something. So never, if in your role or in our role, we never promise that they get all the minerals. In fact, I'll probably tell them you probably are not getting all the minerals.
Mhm. Right.
Because a while back we had, and there was a while, not to bore you, the state at 1.5, we were guaranteeing minerals. Which would have raised our actuaries like, well, you can do that, but your average premium is going to be $15,000 compared to what it is now to have an adequate coverage of that risk. So if in your contract, somebody says, I want to make sure I have the minerals, we would then connect you with a land person. That's going to be an independent decision you'll have to make. We don't cover that in the title policy just because of the reasons I just told you. The cost to do that would make our rates like 100 times what they are, or 10 times what they are.
I got a quick question.
Any questions on the property side, sales price?
Hang on just a second, George. Hang on.
Yeah.
Is it safe to say that on minerals, if the seller believes that they filled out the addendum to retain the mineral rights,
Step up here. The mic's over here in the corner.
the seller has filled out the addendum to retain the mineral rights, and he does have income on it. So by filling that out, it's safe to say what he has now, he will continue to have. Even if there's
Whatever that is, yes.
some other owner involved in it that we don't know about, or some segment of it, he's going to continue to.
Right. So that's a great, what we interpret, and the state interprets that as saying is that he acknowledges that whatever minerals he has, not what minerals he thinks he has, or what mineral he thought he had, or was told he had, or what mineral his dad told him had. It's whatever he has, that's his intent is to keep those. And the buyer will then know that they're not getting those minerals, and those are being retained, whatever those may be, by the seller. We had this problem back in the late teens, 20 teens, where then a lot of minerals became more valuable, particularly up in the DFW area with the Barnett Shale. I don't know if you guys know, that was a big natural gas reserve.
Sure.
Tommy Lee Jones was their spokesperson, which I thought was pretty cool. And so people all of a sudden decided they were going to become the plant pits. I don't know how old you people, I can't really tell.
We've got some people that recognize that.
The hillbillies that found crude, went to Jethro. Anyways, so we got a lot more people retaining those minerals, and it became an issue. So that's why now we have this amendment, and we want to make sure. So if I was you, I'd be very careful if the seller is looking to you, say, hey, if I do this, I get all the minerals. Or if they say, well, what minerals do I have? Isn't the title company going to tell me? The answer is no. The title company will in fact take exception to any minerals. But we all have land people down on the payroll, but in our Rolodex, which I don't know if you know, so you see this thing that had all these numbers on it down on the phone. But and we can get you a land person, and they can, if you want to pay them, they can tell you what they find. Now, I can't tell you in the real world it's been delayed or closed, because those are not quick actions, so to speak.
Okay.
Did I answer your question, man?
Yes, we did. Thank you, George.
My pleasure. Sales price, just make sure those numbers all match up. And for the fixture leases, I don't know, that's your solar panels, propane tanks, water softeners, and security systems. Keep in mind, if your buyer doesn't want them, the seller isn't just going to, or the fixture lease person is not going to just let you keep it there. And they're going to come and extract that from the property. And remember, the title, we're specifically not going to cover that. But I would say those are ones that on a highlight thing that I would do. If I saw that there are fixture leases, or if you walked in there and you saw a solar panel, you're probably going to guess there's a fixture lease, right? Or if you see a propane type apparatus, or what I'm really water softeners, security systems. you probably, little due diligence is to see who's paying for those and who owns those and things of that nature. Because if the buyer takes them, I just had my niece have this issue. Solar panel people are going to come, but they're not going to be very, and nobody there who's married to a solar panel person.
No, I don't think so. No, I think we're good.
Okay. They may not be as cautious as you would think when they take that off the roof, so to speak.
Yeah.
So when you have those fixture leases, that's what I always thought, like I even highlighted it here. That's something that in part of a contract is answering questions, right? So one of the questions you're going to want to do before that closing is, who is the buyer taking over the lease? Have they seen the lease? Do they know they're having this lease? If they don't want this lease, are they comfortable with them taking it off, and how that's all going to be? Because last thing you need is a call after a closing, right?
Mhm.
Saying, hey, why is Solar John here taking off my, it's not, and by the way, who does have the right in those contracts to do that? He's supposed to be careful, but, I leave that to you to decide what comfort level that is or carefulness that is. And that has come up more and more lately. I don't know what is going on, but we've had more of those at closings, fixture lease issues.
Yep.
And what we're willing to do about them. And the answer is we're not willing to do a heck of a lot.
Right.
So.
No, we're good on that one.
Things.
I think we're good on that one.
Our earnest money, back in number 5, here's what I would just keep in mind, that the earnest money, the most common in the option period, just remember those are 2 distinct separate things. Don't get them confused. And where we kind of get this is when there's an earnest money dispute. How many of you have had an earnest money dispute? Probably some of you have.
Yeah, last
Okay. That's when the deal falls through and the person wants to keep the seller wants to retain their earnest money for a variety of reasons, and the buyer wants their earnest money back. Okay. And if you look at the contract, it says it fails. There's terms like we may. The title company, first of all, just keep in mind, does not have to take sides. That's the first thing I point that out. The idea is that we're going to be the trier of fact and determine who gets the earnest money. My answer, if they call me, is if there's a dispute, nobody gets it until they figure something out. Now, my off the record, which is on the record because it's being taped advice, is that if you can split their earnest money, you're probably going to be better off at the end of the day. Because if there's a dispute and neither side wants to give in, for lack of a better term, and this does happen, we're going to put the money in the court. Okay, and it's usually going to be a small claims court. It's going to be, then you're going to have a case in front of a justice of the peace, which is a judge, but it'd be like, I've always thought I might want to do that someday, is it'd be like once a week, twice a week, I wear a robe and go to court and hear these sort of disputes, dogs or this and that. A lot of them aren't going to be that savvy. So usually if it goes to a small claims court or justice of the peace, the buyer's going to get their money back, because what's going to happen, usually they'll say, well, did you buy the house now? Does the seller still own the house? Yeah. Has the seller sold the house? Yeah. Why should the seller get and they don't have to follow, they do it as an equitable situation. And most times they'll look at the buyer as the aggrieved party. So I just bring that up, that if you haven't, yes, ma'am.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Talk to the camera and talk loud.
Without the release of earnest, I thought there was a cloud on the house. I thought because it's still held under that property, that's a cloud.
Okay, so I got part of it, but maybe if I give you my second part, I answer that question, and that's fine. So the question is that cloud on title? I thought I heard this right.
Yes.
Yes.
Would that cause you not to be able to sell the property?
Correct.
That's correct.
Okay. Look how good we are in sync here. I love it. Here's what I would tell you. There's 2 things. We started doing this a few years ago, and it's worked out well. But I would ask you or somebody to talk to the person who's holding the earnest money, or who's fighting for the earnest money. Let's say it's the buyer, and say, do you still want the house? the answer more times than not is going to be no. They don't want the house. You with me so far? So they're saying, I want my money. I don't want the house. At that point, what they would get something from us saying, hey, please confirm that you have no right to claim interest to the property and that you have no, you're not offering a claim towards that property. You're not trying to, it's called specific performance in contracts. That's very rare, but that's when a court says you have to do this. They physically is a strong word, but they would force you to do it a certain way. Okay, you went so far so good?
Yes.
If they send that to us, we will close the, then we look at that as that now it's just a monetary claim. It's not a title claim. It's not a land ownership claim. And we feel comfortable that we can move forward. I would tell you if you switch title companies, you're gonna have to educate them on what's going on. Does that make sense? Like there was an earthquake dispute over a McKnight title. You're now a capital title. Capital title probably is gonna want, or as we would with anybody else, because we want to, we as an industry, we don't want to wait. So that's, I would just say open communication. Now, if they say, oh no, I want to buy the house. Okay. And the seller's like, I already have another seller. For these reasons, they're out of contract. You with me so far?
Yes.
That's a case, then there's a thing called slander of title. And what that is, it's a tort where you can't hold up a property inappropriately just to get a monetary. So you can't hold it for ransom, for lack of a better term. You don't, right? So if you walk through the process, if they refuse to release the earnest money, and if I was the seller, if you're representing the seller, you may want to nudge them and say, let's think long term. Is it really worth fighting over this to get your house full, right? Okay. But people get stubborn. I don't know if you know that or not. In real estate, we have stubborn clients. I don't know if you know that or not. And so sometimes they're going to dig their heels in, particularly in Fort Worth. They are going to have cowboy boots. They're going to dig them in, and they're going to say, no, we're not. And what I would say at that point is when we call the buyer, talk to the buyer, to go back to what I said, we're going to see what their true claim is. And if they don't have a claim to the real property, they don't want to buy it, they don't have any title interest in it, we can then put that money in escrow, or we could escheat it to the court and move on with the transaction.
Who signs that document that you mentioned, the specific?
It should be it would be nice if it was, there's not a statutory requirement as to who, but what I would like to see is the buyer, maybe their agent, or somebody that can acknowledge. That's good. And you got to talk to your broker, and they're going to want you to sign that document too. Because remember, it's our goal is to. It's going to be up to you. What we're going to need is a signature at minimum from the buyer, right? Because they're the ones really at the end of the day. And then I would just say, but we're probably going to talk to you since you're the representative. Does that make sense? Our relationship, we're in a weird business where our true relationship isn't a lot of times with the ultimate consumer. It's with the consumer's fiduciary, which is you. But I'm not saying you have to sign it.
No, I think
Somebody's going to.
I think
That's just to go to the lady behind you. That was just a solution when there is an earnest money dispute.
Well,
And they're just arguing over money, how we can move forward to have a closing.
well, that definitely benefits the seller.
I do have a question, because literally this whole, not exactly scenario played out last week on a tract of land in Eastland County. So we had been delayed because of title work from the examiners in Eastland County. Got title work back, and they said there were 2 easements notated that were missed on the survey. So kind of got everybody, up in arms and trying to somebody talking.
Sorry, Liz, your mic just got turned on.
Liz, I see you guys again.
Okay, so anyways, we have so we have two easements that, at first said weren't disclosed on title, or weren't disclosed on the survey. And so of course gave a rip to my buyer, like, oh, I don't know if we want to buy this, explain this, very concerned. They're not real familiar with land. So they were, very concerned. So then after a day or so, the examiner from Eastland County contacts Title, Radican, and Willow Park and says, hey, wait a minute, they're on the survey. Sorry, we made an error. Well, you've already caused an emotional rift in the transaction by making error. And so my client sort of saw that she had an out, and and so we tried to object, like, hey, like this came, and then we got the corrections. And then my client said, I mean, hands down, like, no matter what we said to her, she's like, I'm not buying this property. I'm done. I'm out. Terminate, whatever. So again, we tried to go back to earnest money, and then, I obviously had conversation back and forth with the listing agent and just said, like, hey, the errors were corrected. The easements are on the survey. You just need to give them the earnest money. Like, you're backing out just because you got cold feet. There's really nothing in the contract that protects you. This is just a cold feet issue. We've resolved, the survey issue. And the listing agent tried to push back at me about this specific performance. And I'm kind of like, but we cheerfully surrender the earnest money. So like at that point, I'm talking to Brian and I'm like, hey, we've been compliant. I've advised my client, hey, you're really not backing out for a great reason. We need to extend this earnest money. Like, that's just the right thing to do. And then the seller still wanted to pursue. I'm not sure what they were trying to pursue, I guess is what I'm saying.
So a few things about specific performance, at least in Texas, it's a hard nut to crack for a judge who's going to force somebody to buy a piece of property. Okay? Their damages are going to be more monetary.
Okay.
If there are damages.
Well, and that was,
remember,
yeah, and that was kind of our, I mean, just kind of reviewing the file, is like, there had been no repairs made, no environmental, I mean, there had been no expenses incurred by the seller, no survey, that, because it was, a previous survey, I mean, no expenses incurred by the seller, but, the inconvenience of having the property off the market for 3 or 4 weeks. And so that's where we were struggling to go, what do you want from me? Finally getting a hold of the broker and not the agent. The broker, he understood what I was saying, is like, we've extended the earnest money, willingly, and didn't wish to go farther.
So, I mean, that's what we're good. Sometimes it's going to take a back and a forth, and then another back and another forth to get to that point. Specific performance, I would, if I was in a negotiation, so I says, well, I'm going to force you to do this, I'm probably going to be comfortable that that's not going to happen. Right?
Yeah.
And then if to the point for the previous question is, if they're still going to fight over the earnest money, that's fine. We can escheat it to the court and they can fight it over there. But we also, if they're still fighting, we want to make sure, as we were talking about before, that they're not making a claim towards title to the property, or they have a right to, they're not still trying to get the property.
Right.
We can delineate that and have the buyer would be preferable to sign that. Then we can make that decision to move forward with another contract. And if they choose not to, then we have those issues of slander and all that good stuff. Any other questions?
I think we're good, George.
It's already 10:52. I hope this has been helpful. Yeah.
Yes, very great information.
It's just
We-
Title policy and survey. Just remember, you should just hard code McKnight title on your contract, so you don't have to worry about picking it. No, I'm kidding. Just pay attention. There are a lot of great title companies in your area, but obviously our favorite is McKnight, since, well,
Sure.
So, through there, they want to shorten just an area. That's where you pay a little extra on the exception. So that's why I always get the commitment as soon as you can. Kind of look at that. It's always important just to make sure that you're all on the same page. But, and also within there, you have it just spells what a title policy is and what a commitment is. And if the document, and it talks about if there's issues that come up, you have the right to look at those. So that's why the quicker, it's always good to have your what I call, well, something of vital dates. I don't know if that's the right word, super important dates, but know when your closing is, and make sure that you get a title commitment as far from there. But the idea that you may have to have the title company do a check to date. I'm just looking at six, just what's in there. Just so you have that ability to, because we're gonna do a bring the date as close to the closing as possible. Just keep in mind that title information, real property records are posted every day. But there's usually a delay of a week or two. So like if we pull one up today, it may be 11/15, November 15th is what documents we're looking at.
Good.
So just, so we always want for you guys protections to do a bring today. And then within there, if there's something in that title policy that is so bad that you don't want to close, that's the time to, and things that I would say are bad that you don't want to close would be if somebody has an interest in the property and we can't get a deed from them. You're probably not going to want to buy the house because of that. But then there also just keep in mind taxes, we'll collect, but also remember there may be exemptions or things of that can roll over. And just, if you have those questions, make sure you talk to your closer about those. Is there any questions about title insurance in general? I mean, it's a lot of.
Anyone, title insurance in general? No?
Yeah, anything about title insurance, the need for it? No.
No.
It's necessary evil.
I think everybody's,
It helps, just
I think we're all pretty versed on title and what's needed.
good.
So,
I think the cool thing I would tell you about title insurance, that's different than other types of insurance, since we're not a casualty company, is that one out of every 3 closings has a title issue that has to be resolved before closing. Would that surprise you? Anyways.
really?
Yeah, and that number is crazy. For the last 25 years, we've done surveys and it always comes up to be about 30 to 35% of all closings has some sort of title. It could be a payoff, a proof of a payoff, a deed from an ex-spouse or a current spouse. They accidentally, they paid off their credit cards, but the judgment's still flowing out there. Things like that. So that's the one thing about title insurance is not only protects you in the future, but it also protects you when you're walking into closing to make sure things are done correct. Is there anything else on the contract that you're dying to know about?
Anybody? Have you ever had a contract question? Anybody? The
I
news?
tell you what, number 10, possession. Just keep in mind that we're not giving the keys until it's funded. Is that fair enough?
We love that.
So if you look and there's a moving van out in front of McKnight Title and it's your closing, make sure that they've owned that moving van for an extra day because we're not giving the keys. We probably should until we have the funding. Fair enough? And with that, just keep in mind now, if they want to stay longer, if they want to move in before the funding, make sure that they have a residential lease done. So look at it this way. If you don't have a key, if you give them a key and it hasn't been funded, you should have a lease, a residential lease. That's all in 10. And
Holly had a question,
with that,
George.
also, if you're recommending a seller, just make sure they keep that insurance. Don't have them pull their insurance so quick. Only because let's say it's a Friday. These are Friday closings. I understand why they happen. Can be problematic after about 4 o'clock because banks close. You may not get funding. So I always, as a matter of practicality, is if you're recommending a seller and they're in such a closing, encourage them to pay for the extra days of insurance because you don't want to have no insurance and then have something happen to the property while technically you're still the owner. And that actually happened down in Laredo. And it turned into, they thought they gave the keys and I'm not kidding, they threw I don't know how you throw such a great party that the house burns to the ground, but they did. And apparently they hadn't funded yet. So that caused a little bit of a problem, to say the least.
Did you have a question, Holly?
Well, I just wanted to say something about for the newer agents specifically, because I didn't experience it until probably 3 or 4 years ago, about tax prorations, about how they collect on the estimated, but if there's a discrepancy after the fact, after closing and the taxes are actually higher and somebody was debited too much or credited too much, how that's kind of handled, because I had that happen to one of my sellers, and they weren't very happy about it, but they signed the document saying they understood it, so. Can you just explain that especially for like the newer agents, because like I said, I only experienced it like 3 or 4 years ago.
Parts of prorations and how we get the information and we prorate
I think,
So-
George, I think we can handle that later. I can talk about it after the class, how that works for after closing stuff. So let's move on from that.
Yeah, just so you know, the closer we just take the information, we do prorated amounts as to at the time of the closing and divide it as best we can. If we think there's going to be a potential rollback because of a homestead exemption that should be there, or over 65 an A, we do, and then that's why we have you sign that. There's a document that you sign that kind of acknowledges what we do to give you those numbers. And then kind of go from there.
Right.
That's what that's what we do. So we explain the process, you sign, yeah, you understand what we're doing as best as we can do it. And then after that's more on. So.
Yep.
And we do a whole class on that too, by the way.
Oh, cool. George, we thank you so much for your time.
I'll let Closer do that one. You don't want me to do that one.
Hey, guys, hang on just a
Any
second.
other questions?
Hang on, guys. Hey, just a second. Let me thank everybody. Thank you, George. Everybody thank George, please. Great information.
Thank you. I'll talk to y'all later.
Thank you, George.
Yes, sir.
Liz, you still on? I guess they closed it. Okay. So what Holly was referring to for newer agents after closing, at closing, the taxes are prorated to the day. So it's January the 1st through the day of closing is the seller's portion of the taxes. But it's prorated on a scale of 365 days. Okay. So they break it down. If you owe $36,000, it's $100 a day. Okay. Does that make sense? Make sense? So after closing, if the taxes change, so let's just say that you're going to close in August, but the new taxes come out in October and taxes go up 10%. Well, now the seller owes the buyer more money because the taxes go from 36 to 40. Well, let's just say, let's make it even, okay, and make it simple. They go up $3,600. Well, that's an extra $10 a day that the seller now owes the buyer. So that is between them. Okay. You can help them if you're the buyer's agent and the buyer comes to you and goes, the taxes went up $3,600. That's maybe something you should have that conversation with them at closing that, hey, the taxes, we don't know what the taxes are going to be yet in October.
How is that fair or make sense? Because especially like with veterans, I have a lot of clients that sell their house and they're 100% disabled, so they have $0 in taxes, and
Correct.
that follows through till the next year.
Correct. But the
So-
title company on those loans is collecting as if they're not collecting any taxes.
They don't
I don't
collect
have the
anything.
same exact date.
And
Well, the
I mean-
lenders do tell them though. I had my lenders tell them.
So-
I mean, I've never had it be an issue, but
That's-
I'm just confused on this where there are populations that do not
So
have
that's-
any.
I know that there's,
I'm gonna be like you, like, if I'm representing the buyer, I'm gonna go into the lender and be like, have you accounted for taxes?
Mhm.
Because and I'm gonna, I do a lot of new construction, so that's obviously a
Yes.
conversation. I
Yeah,
have
always.
anyways.
and then the
Butter.
situation where the money changes, it happens in October.
Right.
Every year it happens in October where that actual money from the seller to the buyer increases.
Right.
And because it's already built.
Well, that sounds like a lender issue then, not a title issue. If the
Well,
lender.
but no,
but
the lender also doesn't get that notification until after.
I know, but usually, I mean, at least the lenders I've worked with they always put in a bigger
Yeah,
buffer.
they do.
They put in a
They do.
larger
They do.
buffer, so
Yes.
it may not be right technically for the buyer.
That's what
But on
the buyer
the
was an
seller's
engineer,
side,
and
Yeah.
he was like doing all the, I mean, he was doing it in
Yeah.
there.
but on the seller side, it comes as a surprise
Yeah.
because they're thinking still from whatever the estimated April they got. Well, no, now there's the bill of October.
You can always
Now
help
it's
them
the-
by calculating the tax rate.
Right.
And also, I mean, as an agent, that probably should be as for buyers, you should be doing your due diligence to inform them about taxes. And I mean, so new construction or 100% disabled or whatever, you should be digging into what's going on in the neighborhood as far as taxes anyways. Pull some recent your comps or
Well,
whatever.
and the bad thing is, especially with like new build neighborhoods, for example, in Central Texas, I have a client looking to buy a home and the tax rate is what is hanging her up. But the builder had the incorrect tax rate in the MLS listings and all the resale homes had one tax rate. All the new builds have a different tax rate, and I'm talking like 2.3 to 2.69. What's a big jump?
What source do you think is the best to have accurate taxes and tax rates?
The tax certificate
Yeah,
that the
that's
title
what I'm
company
saying,
draws.
yeah. This only happened,
you can't
this
do that,
happened to me
that's
once, like Holly, and it came back a year later. So I represented the seller. They sold. I got a call a year later from the buyer's agent saying that they were going to sue us because we didn't have enough tax. They got a bill and they were going to sue us. I was like, wait a second, what happened? The taxes were actually including 2 exemptions that were not correct that the seller had been getting credit for. So when Tad went back and corrected it, they were like, here's the bill.
Yeah.
Here's the new bill.
Yeah.
And so the buyer got the bill because they own the home, but it was part of those taxes were out. After we dug in and explained it, it was fine. It's just, I think you can do as much as you can and document it with an email, especially on new construction, that remember when we were in closing and we are collecting this, that you have that there because you don't even know what they are. But those are the things that I worry about is people getting into new construction and not accounting for, you need to save a little more than what you are doing.
I do what you do, especially on new construction, but I over communicate it because after that happened, like at closing, I'm like, okay, now understand that it's the title document that goes over that. It's their long form or whatever. But I said, understand if something comes, and it was just when values like shot up like crazy. That's the only time that ever happened, but for me at least.
Well, and I think there's a lot of title companies, especially new construction companies, that I think they explain it pretty well. And a couple of them have forms.
They do. And the only other thing I would say for new agents, Brian, we didn't go over this a little long, was the objections. Not putting a number of days in there has been like I've heard people say if you put nothing, then it doesn't mean nothing. It could be infinity. So to put your objection days in there, regardless if you have any objections that you give your client time.
Yeah.
Like even
And
a 0 or
if
a 14
or whatever you want, right? I mean, typically I'm at 3 or 5. If I have no objections, I'll put 5. Because then that gives us a deadline that I have commitment and we have 5 days to
Look it over.
If you want to put in there, must be able to install an in-ground pool, or I want chickens or whatever, then you can put those number of days there too. But I think that this is something that has come up in my entire career, that if you put nothing, that does not mean nothing. If the other side could interpret as a buyer could say, I've got all the way up to closing.
Mhm.
And I was
And I'll
always
use it.
trained, and I was always trained that a blank on a contract meant 0.
Right.
Yep.
And
It
so,
does
which it doesn't,
Hey.
but
Or NA.
Yeah.
NA doesn't mean anything either. I've had that might be.
I would also say paragraph 21
yeah.
notices.
Yes.
Because a lot of agents will put only their information in there, but if you miss something from title and it doesn't get to your buyer, it can be really uncomfortable.
I have a friend that's going through, borderline lawsuit because of a delivery, what is
The delivery.
the delivery,
Of
wasn't completed. And so
notices.
notices. So the seller's saying, nope, we never got notice. And the buyer's like, yeah, yes, you did. What do you mean?
I think it's important because when now that we're communicating with agents more often, from the very beginning, is there was a time during COVID that a lot of contracts were just left blank. And I was like, I need that information. So I would be writing offers and saying, I need the seller's information. They're like, you can just use mine. I was like, I would prefer to have all parties, key parties in here.
Or just say, hey, are you willing to accept the liability that comes with?
Right.
Yeah.
And it's just that you do it. Just to clarify, you guys are saying put emails of your
Client.
Of all the parties.
You can put yourself, but
It
you,
says send a copy.
but you dang sure better make sure your client's information.
At least something.
Because that's kind of, it's not free from liability, but it at least goes, buyer has given you this information, they signed off on this contract, and then they should be accountable for that information to be contacted by.
What training did we do on that? It's not title, it's us. Yeah, it's an us thing. Do you remember what training we did where somebody basically was saying that because that was filled out appropriately, basically the buyer's agent terminated the contract, but the information for the seller was there. Seller was an attorney, and he said, I was not given notice of this termination. And that's what that's for. All parties have to be notified. And so if you're the only one on the contract and you were notified and you didn't notify them, you're now liable.
So if you're representing the buyer, you need to try to make sure the seller understands their liability if they don't give you.
I mean,
Not understand their liability, fill in the blanks.
What if they won't, like you said, they aren't gonna
Well,
tell you?
I
Don't worry
mean,
about it.
I would
Well,
tell
that's
my,
on the listing agent.
Yeah.
Just don't worry
but
about
I
it.
would tell either buyer or seller party that's unwilling to share this information.
I would just explain.
Like you're setting yourself up for missing things that are pertinent to the contract.
Yeah.
I mean, you always want to have 2 or 3 sets of eyes of everything that's going on all the time.
I wish I could remember what training that
I don't
was
want-
because it was real. I was like, oh God, like that's.
It's been on
That's a
almost
big
every
one.
contract class that I've had. They harp on 21. We talk about objections. We probably go into a little more detail about surveys. We didn't touch that at all.
Yeah.
Well, they go into a little
And
more
do
detail.
keep in mind-
Some of that's changing.
It is.
Yeah.
In the
and
next-
maybe that's why.
By the first of the year.
Information, your client is initialing that this is the way to contact them. I mean, they do have some accountability and signing this contract.
I don't want to keep y'all too long, but I've got just like 4 minutes of quick stuff that I want to go over with y'all. Let me finish my slides. This will be in Slack, but I just kind of wanted you guys to see the market update. Nice bump in September on buyer activity. Pending home sales up more than 7% since highest level since March. Builder spending, I don't know if you saw that a couple of weeks ago. Builders are getting bullish on the market. I am not making any political statement here whatsoever, but things that happened yesterday will be affecting our market over the next couple of months. So everybody I don't know if that's good or bad. I don't know, but the election will have an effect on those 38% of buyers that were out of the market. It's going to do it. I don't know if it means the same thing. Stock market went up 3% in an hour and a half this morning overseas. And then as soon as we opened, we were up almost 3.5 points
Yeah.
this morning. So I don't know if that's good for everybody. I don't know prices, but it's something that we need to be considering and thinking about.
What about rates? Because I had a lender tell my client, don't worry, rates are not gonna go down that quick. And I'm like, I think they're trying to talk them into doing these buy downs. And my clients are like, why do I want to do a buy down? What if the rate goes down in 3 months?
It's-
25.
Well, if 25 is probably the Fed's meeting November this week, and then they'll meet again in December. Okay, but this, look right here, this is what they're telling you. There's still a lot of things out there that are affecting. Remember, the Fed meeting does not have a direct relationship to mortgage rates. It has a direct relationship to bond prices. But if you look right here, some of these things here, they're talking about the bonds and how they actually went up. When the 10-year treasury goes up, mortgage rates go up. Everything that the mortgage market thinks that the Fed is going to do, they bake those rates in 3 weeks early, sometimes a month early. So if they're expecting the Fed to drop rates by 1/4 point this week, they've already been doing that for 2 weeks. Okay. If they're thinking in December that they're going to drop them a 1/4 point, they're going to start doing that right around Thanksgiving. Okay. So this is where the rates are. The core PCA inflation was above the 2% target for the 3rd straight month, which might rule out big rate cuts. But they'll have to cut to avoid a recession, as the manufacturing data showed that the sector is still weakening. So there's all these forces that are pushing on the Fed. Now, with a new president in there, he may have, the verbal capacity to affect more things from the Fed. He doesn't have the right to do it, but he can push people. And that's just the way we're going to see for the next couple of years.
I think also policy.
Absolutely. Policies have a big thing. So there's going to be a lot of changes now, and we'll see how those changes come out. I don't know. I don't have a clue. I'm watching the same data that y'all are watching. This is my best way of getting information to you, is this slideshow every week. Mortgage applications, the MBA mortgage applications index to see if purchase applications remain ahead of last year. Labor cost preliminary reads expected to report an increase. This is all coming this week. The Fed's rate decision on Thursday should give us another 1/4% cut. So that's where that's coming in. But that's on the Fed rate. That's not on the mortgage rate. The Federal Reserve Watch, I keep this up here because I think it's a real good indicator of what they're thinking. You'll see that the numbers have not changed week over week. Even though we got some other numbers coming in, they're still expecting the same 1/4 point rate cut. You don't have to read that now. I'm not going to keep y'all here. one thing we have noticed is that on the showing, the 1501 and the 1507, we're seeing some dates. If you guys want to wait and sign those in pen, I don't care. I just got to cover our butts. Do you understand what I mean? So you can't have a contract that's dated today and a showing services or a 1501 or 1507 that's dated tomorrow. That 1501, 1507 must be predated the contract. Please, let's just be. I'm just telling you the truth, okay? If you guys do that in pen and the
I don't know
dates,
why he's looking at me. 'Cause
I'm looking at everyone. I'm just.
It's not me.
Avoiding eye contact with me.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. It's not making y'all think it's me.
Andrew, if you do that again, no. Listen, I'm not trying to be a bad guy.
I mean,
It's just, that's the rules. That's the way it is now after the settlement.
And that's why I carry my CP note. Right now, you go in my car right here, there's a black folder that has information about road services and the 1507.
Okay.
Because I'm like, at least we've signed it.
It's something. And if it gets written in pen and it's a date that you guys agreed that you started working together and it's before a contract date, how am I going to know the difference? How is anybody else? But be aware, okay? Be aware. MLS can request a 1501 or 1507 from you at any time. They can request that from us, and we have to provide it at this point because of all the NAR stuff that's going on and people pulling out of MLSs and all this.
And it's like $1,000 fine.
It's $1,000 fine.
Do not pass go, do not click $100.
So I need to get my clients to sign one in any.
That predates the contract, please.
Well, I started.
And I'm not telling you anything illegal.
Yeah. since
I'm
you
not.
shoot the messenger, I'm like,
It's just better if everybody, before you show a house, at least get a 1507.
Yeah.
Just get something in writing that shows, here's the date we did this, and now tomorrow, you can even sign, you can sign that contract that day. That's fine, as long as the dates match up. But we're noticing that, so, and it's not just Jana, it's not just you. There are more people that have done
I'm
that.
perfectly okay if it is just me.
When we have to run it,
It can be same day.
it can be same day
Of the contract.
of the contract. If that's how you're doing it, just for simplicity, just don't show a house without a 1507. That's just the simple thing.
Yeah.
Now, if it's your mom and you're taking your family out and y'all are going to look at a house and you go look at the house and then you go, oh, we want to buy this house. Well, just go ahead and put it in your documents that you've got a showing agreement that day. Just go ahead and do it. Okay. Just, that's one of the big things that they're going to be watching. Okay. I'm trying not to, I don't want to be a bad guy ever. You guys know me. I'm not a bad
We
guy.
need you to be the bad guy if we're not doing stuff right too. Like, we don't want to be paying $1,000 fine.
No.
We don't want you to pay our $1,000
No.
fine. So you have to tell us.
Yeah.
I'm okay if they take my $1,000.
Hey guys, thank you for your,
I did completely NAR, so I wasn't.
Yeah.
yeah, code of ethics.
Hey, Maria,
Code of ethics.
hey, I had taken ethics in my CE course like 6 or 8 months ago, and I was like, okay, well, surely that counts. Then Brian texted me, you don't have, but then I took screenshots and sent them to NAR that is still reflective of compensation in MLS. I was like, really, guys? You want me to go take ethics?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, hey guys, thank you for your time. Thank you all for coming for the contract class. You don't have to leave. We don't have a class starting here for 40 minutes. You can stay and talk, whatever. But thank you for coming. Thank you for being on time. See you next Wednesday, 9:45. Thank you all for joining us online. Brian, Aaron, Twyla, everybody, thank you.